So BJ Penn is back in the news today as BJ Penn is going to be returning to the Octagon coming in on June at UFC 199, the beginning of June. It's a whole new month for the UFC. An excellent, what better way to kick off the month of June than with UFC 199, which will have Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman. The fight card is stacked. We'll get to that here in a bit. And this could probably end up being either a prelim, headliner, or potentially end up being, just to kick off the pay-per-view. I think the event is going to be stacked top to bottom. We got, two title fights going on, but we'll get to that in a whole, here in a little bit. So let's go in and talk about this fight between BJ Penn and Dennis Siver. Now, on the BJ Penn side of things, there's a huge controversy around him. There's a criminal investigation. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to be the asshole that comes on here and says a whole bunch of lies and ends up getting a whole lot of dislikes and get a lot of backlash here, because that's not what I'm about on here. I'm here to give you guys, precisely what I think is going to end up happening at the fight, my prediction for the fight, and just gives you, some overall, news, rumors, and updates in the world of sports. So, hopefully you guys are still with me here, and we'll talk about BJ Penn. Like I said, he's coming into this fight with some controversy, which will not, sidetrack him at all. So he will be fighting, exclusively at UFC 199. I know he was briefly linked to UFC 197. I know he had a bit of a rivalry, an exchange of words against Nick Lentz on Twitter. I think it was Instagram as well. So both fighters have, just been backlashing at each other left and right. BJ Penn is not going to get Nick Lentz. I think, that if BJ Penn does pull out a victory against Dennis Siver, maybe he should get Nick Lentz, because he still has to work his way up the totem pole. BJ Penn, he's not currently ranked. I don't think he's a top 15 competitor. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. And, everybody's going to ask myself, Justin, do you think a victory against, Dennis Siver will, put BJ Penn back into the, the winning spotlight? I think it could. But we'll all have to wait and see, how he feels, and how see how the fight goes out. And he can't really confirm anything. But I think there could be a possibility that he could continue as a fighter. I think he's like 37 or 38 years old right now, kind of pushing into his 40s. But there is a lot of there's still a lot of fight left in him if he comes out of retirement and comes back and wants to fight in the Octagon. So like I said, a 3-fight losing streak for BJ Penn starting back at 2011, has not seen the winning spotlight since 2010. I know there was a draw at UFC 127. It was a draw fight between him and John Fitchell, which was a pretty fun fight to watch at UFC 127. His last victory, like I said, is coming back in 2010. So he has not seen a victory in almost 6 years. So, he is much needed in a victory right now. His last 3 fights, he was knocked out by Frankie Edgar at the tough finale, Edgar versus Penn, back in July of 2014. After that, he lost to Rory McDonald, which a lot of people thought that was ultimately his last fight. It just did not look like BJ Penn. BJ Penn was dominated for 3 rounds against Rory McDonald. I just got done watching that fight, watching a lot of BJ Penn fights just to get ready for this video. Just did not really see a whole lot from BJ Penn in that fight, where everybody thought that he was slowing down a little bit. His age, a factor in it. It's just, we did not see that BJ Penn, but Rory McDonald really took it to BJ Penn in that fight back in December 2012, and then UFC 137 in a very pretty exciting after the fight kind of ordeal from Nick Diaz. BJ Penn lost to Nick Diaz at UFC 137. So BJ Penn really needs a victory here. I think that if BJ Penn really wants to continue to be an active fighter, he's got to pick up a victory here. If going on a 4-fight losing streak is not going to put a smile on some of the guys in the office. So he really needs to start concentrating and looking at doing what he has to do in order to get a victory here. I know BJ Penn is a lengthy veteran in the Octagon, and so is Dennis Siver. Dennis Siver has also been, competitive fighting for quite a while now. So I think this is a right match for both competitors. So I think that, it's going to be a close one. Now let's go over to Dennis Siver and look at his build for the fight. So Dennis Siver, is also entering the fight on a 2-fight losing streak. His recent victory was against Charles Rosa at UFC Fight Night Nelson versus Story back in October of 2014. His last 2 fights come out as a loss, like I said. At the Berlin card, Jędrzejczyk versus Penn back in June of 2015. He lost to Kawajiri via unanimous decision, and then following that, he was knocked out by the rising and the UFC featherweight champion Conor McGregor. And I honestly thought if Dennis Siver was to pull off the upset and knock out Conor McGregor, or defeat Conor McGregor, that he's gonna be the next superstar in the UFC. Conor McGregor had a huge fan behind him. The fandemonium of Conor McGregor, the fandom of Conor McGregor. if you knock out Conor McGregor, or you even tap out Conor McGregor, and what if it was Dennis Siver that was to do that? Well, Dennis Siver ended up getting the VIP status of what Nate Diaz is getting now. I think he could have, and I think that could have ended up getting Dennis Siver that opportunity at the title, because he's a top-ranked competitor, and at the time Conor McGregor was well on his rise for a championship shot, and he was campaigning for a championship shot. So I think that could have happened. So I mean, both fighters coming into this fight on losing streaks, and a lot of people have been saying, could this be Dennis Siver's last fight if BJ Penn is to pull off the ultimate upset? Everybody's favoring Dennis Siver in this match. Everybody's not 100% in on BJ Penn. How's his conditioning? Is he still training? Over the last couple of years, stepping away from fighting. We just don't know. You can't really predict. We'll have to wait and see. How he turns out. How's his workout regimen? I guess we'll see that in upcoming episodes. I know UFC posted some of the episodes, following the fighters around, the training and everything like that, interviews, everything like that. So we'll just have to wait and see and hear, as time comes by. So, like I said, UFC 199 is going to be taking place at the beginning of June 4th, at the Forum in Inglewood, California, and what a stacked card this is. You're going to have the second fight in the trilogy fight of Rockhold versus Weidman, the second fight. This is going to be the second fight since UFC 194, in which we saw Rockhold knock out Chris Weidman in the 4th round to become the new UFC middleweight champion. The co-main event of the evening is the bantamweight title fight. The final fight, which could be the final fight of these guys' saga, between none other than the champion Dominic Cruz and Uriah Faber. Dustin Poirier versus Bobby Green in the lightweight division is also scheduled for this for the event. You also have Evan Dunham versus Leandro Santos. Kevin Casey is going to be on the fight card, and then you have two fights at the bottom end of this fight card, which could potentially end up being put on in the main card. Brian Ortega versus Clay Guida, and BJ Penn versus Dennis Siver. So let me hear your guys' opinion about this. What are your guys' predictions for the fight? What do you guys think of the fight card for UFC 199? My name is Justin Kish. I'll catch you guys in our next